Hello and welcome to Aztecs All-In Special Edition, FanFest Edition. We are at Snapdragon Stadium. Weiner along with Steve Perez, where the Aztec football team just completed its FanFest scrimmage, and we got to see all the quarterbacks on staff. Steve, what do you think?
I don't know. Right now, I'm just looking at that groundskeeper rolling around, mowing the grass. And again, I want to touch that grass. They don't let us on it. Anytime you get too close to that grass, they say, hey, get off the grass. So that's my first impression. I want to touch that grass.
Well, fans had a good time. Apparently, there were 7,500 tickets given away. There were definitely not 7,500 people in the stands. A lot of people mingled around in the club areas and whatnot, so it was really hard to tell how many people were here. But those here, had a pretty good time, and they got a pretty good look at the new Sean Lewis football team.
Yeah, and Lewis, I kid about the first impression, wanting to touch that grass, but there are also a couple of big picture items when it comes to game day at Snapdragon in the Aztec Fast era. Apparently, they made a slight change in the route of the Warrior Walk. On game days, an Aztec alum leads the players off the bus. They drop everybody off in front of the east entry. They'd be flanked by the cheerleaders, played on by the band. Incidentally, you got to give props to the 14 members of the Aztec band who showed up, and the trio of diamonds dancing, and three baton twirlers. But anyways, back to the Warrior Walk for FanFest. It's starting now on the south end. The second item, I should say, is crisp, shiny, new practice uniforms. Aztecs Jamie O'Connor, says, the old ones, they had seen some use. The Aztecs got their money's worth out of the old ones. Supposedly they've been used for 15 years before they were replaced. Can you imagine that?
Well, new regime, new unis, so that would make sense to me. So let's talk a little bit about what we saw, Steve. Let's talk a little bit about the quarterbacks. We saw all of them, even those that we probably won't see very much of during the season. But, of course, the top two contenders that were told, apparently, because on the depth chart it's either Danny O'Neal or A.J. Duffy. Danny O'Neal, the freshman, played pretty well. He and Duffy both played 4 series, and both played well and not so well. O'Neal threw an interception on his first series, but he also threw a nice pass that was dropped by Jordan Napier. That probably would have been a touchdown. But in his second possession, he did hit Napier with a long pass and scored a touchdown on his own. He ran it in. On his third possession, he was 3 of 4, no score there. And at the very end of the scrimmage, both O'Neal and Duffy got a chance to play a series as if there were 1 minute and 12 seconds left in the game. And in that particular series, it ended with him throwing an interception to Josh Hunter. So what did you think of what you saw from Danny O'Neal today, Steve?
So let's talk about those two players. And at this point, you have to put the older ahead in the quarterback's stakes. And then also, it was jarring to see the same mistake that I saw in the spring scrimmage where Danny O'Neal's rolling around trying to make a play and throws late over the middle, and we'll hear from Chris Johnson later who came up with the interception. I think while we're talking about this podcast before we started taping, I said the first thing I'm sure what's going to happen is someone's going to grab him a coach and say, hey, if it's late, I know you want to make a play, do not throw back against the grain over the middle. Just don't do it. And to his credit, later on in the FanFest proceedings, he got pushed out of the pocket, but wisely either threw it away or tucked and run.
Yeah. A.J. Duffy also got 4 possessions and played pretty well. He led the first series on a field goal with a nice 40-yard pass to Baylin Brooks. His second series, he threw an interception to Jelani Whitmore. On his third possession, there was a 3-play drive, which ended with a Jalen Armstead 40-yard touchdown run. And then when he got his opportunity with the minute 12 left, he threw a 40-yard pass to Jerry McClure that set up a field goal. So the entire scrimmage ended with all the players surrounding the extra point try. I'm sorry, the field goal try, and that's how it ended, with a field goal make. A.J. Duffy, again, he looked pretty good, and he's the transfer, Steve, out of Florida State, and he has the most experience.
Yeah, so let's also talk a little bit about Javance.
Tuapata Johnson.
Thank you, yeah, Tuapata Johnson. I mean, he showed me something today. Yeah. He made some plays. He's got a good arm. He's a big presence in the pocket. He completed some passes. seem to run the offense really well. I would put him and O'Neal at a pretty close 2-3 if it comes down to it. He really showed, I thought some ability today.
Yeah, he had 4 possessions as well. His first possession, there was a nice 45-yard pass to Armstead that got called back due to a penalty. And then his second series, he had a couple of really bad snaps, high snaps, so he wasn't able to do much there. But he did throw a 26-yard touchdown pass to Jerry McClure. And later in the scrimmage, he led a drive that ended with a 7-yard touchdown run by Lucky Sutton. So again, he's a freshman, as is Danny O'Neal. Stephen, right? I was pretty impressed with his play.
Yeah, and you mentioned the bad snaps. We'll talk about the reasons why. It was still a scrimmage, so there were a lot of moving parts. It wasn't like you had just a set 1s and 2s in there. They were doing switching all throughout the scrimmage. It was genuinely something that made it a little bit difficult to follow from up here, but that's part of the process as we are second week of practice pretty much. But you know what else, though? That first game's coming up before you know it.
We also saw some of Kyle Crum and Parker Threat, 2 other quarterbacks on the roster. They didn't get as many snaps and possessions, but after the scrimmage, Coach Sean Lewis talked a little about what he thought today of the quarterback play.
But we need someone to really grab it by the horns and separate, right? And again, that's that consistency. There's moments and there's times throughout each day to where guys, all 3 of the top kids look really, really good, right? And they have exceptional moments. But I mean, we're looking for that consistency, right? Like as a play caller, you want a guy who you know how he's going to operate, how he's thinking, how he's processing, right? So that process is consistent regardless of what the results are, right? And so that's where, again, without really knowing and talking to them and seeing the tape and seeing what their process was, and, you know, you see the picks, and again, yeah, like that has to get better, right? But, you know, how do we get to that point? Why are we thinking through that? And how can I coach them better, right? So that they can process cleaner so we can be more consistent as we go forward.
Essentially, though, they have a pretty good cadre of athletic quarterbacks, and the fact that maybe it's not something that's set in stone at this point, that's not a bad problem to have that many quality athletes at that position.
No, absolutely not. Wide receivers, they played a lot of them, so it was hard to really get a feel. Baylin Brooks had a couple of nice plays. Mikey Welsh, Jerry McClure caught a touchdown pass. Mekhi Shaw did not play today, and I'm not sure why. Did you find out why he wasn't on the field? You're shrugging. But after the game, Baylin Brooks talked a little bit about how he felt the offense moved and what he thought of this first FanFest scrimmage.
We started off a little rough. We started off a little slow. We definitely got to get that in tuned, and just towards the end of the game, we picked it up a little bit, but we got to start off a lot faster. Overall, the offense did all right, but yeah, that's not my expectation. I saw a lot of good things. A couple young quarterbacks stepping up. Javance did a couple really good things today. I saw today. Oh, it opens it up totally. Yeah, it opens up the whole passing game. The running game makes more people come in the box, allows me to get one-on-one matchups and other receivers to get one-on-one matchups and just dominate up top. Prepared us greatly, yeah. It's great to be in the stadium, great to be around some fans, be around this atmosphere. So I think we got 3 more weeks for sure, and we're going to do everything we can to be fully prepared and to go out and dominate from the first quarter on to the fourth.
See, he liked Javance. That's another, a receiver who can talk about another quarterback besides the first 2. The other thing that they want to concentrate on, as I've heard other players talk about after practice, is they're not seeing a whole lot of difference in the way the balls are being delivered. It's kind of hard sometimes, at least from some of the receivers I talk to tell on the one-on-one drills who's actually throwing the ball. So again, consistent. That's a good problem to have. Some good consistent quarterbacks at that position.
Yeah, and positive to come out of this is 2 freshmen, right? Danny O'Neal and Javance Tuapata Johnson. I got that right. Both played very well today. So after the scrimmage, I got a chance to ask Coach Lewis about his Aztec fast offense and whether it's as fast as he wants it to be.
We're not as fast as I wanted to be, and we'll continue to press to go faster, right? But time, situation is going to dictate, right? Like, not to use another baseball analogy, but the only thing you got is a fastball at the MLB. Like, pro hitters can hit that and rock it out of the yard, right? So you need some different pitches, right? So we're going to play fast, but we're going to play fast smart, and situation's going to dictate how we do things. We'll still operate and use a huddle from time to time, right? But, no, it wasn't as fast as we could be. Obviously, the operation and giving and receiving communication, again, can continue to be cleaner. And again, that starts with me, so the guys know, the nuances of everything that we're doing, and we'll refine that, we'll clean that up, and we'll continue to move forward with it.
So, Steve, that's the offense from the moving the ball standpoint. How about from the offensive line standpoint?
Well, kudos to you for getting Tuapata Johnson down. Very good. I was going to say this other anecdote because he has Tongan heritage, and having been on the same plane with some military members of the Tongan force, those are very big members. I'd hate to have to go against them, and he looks big, strong, physical, and that will inure to his benefit and the Aztecs' benefit if he ever is called into service.
Yeah, and you were talking as if you think maybe he's got a shot to be, right up there with the other two top quarterbacks, maybe.
I'm not so sure either, because in general, these quarterbacks are some of the best athletes in any roster in any Division I. So knowing the mad scientist, Coach Lou, the way he probably is, he may have a couple little tricks up his sleeve that you may end up seeing two of them on the field at the same time doing something just a little tricky.
Yeah. You never know. So what about the offensive line? What did you think? What did you see?
These units were not set in stone, okay? So you didn't just see the first group, the second group, the third group. They were all playing at certain periods, in certain times. I thought in one point you referred to the bad snaps, and I'm not going to call that guy out because he's lower on the depth chart, but he got the two bad snaps, air-mailed the second one, and he was out, and they had somebody else in there delivering the snaps. So they have, and that's what they're working toward, trying to get 9 to 10 players in a rotation, but Joe Borjan was in at left tackle, and one of the best run plays I saw, where I was focusing on the left side of the offensive line, and I saw Borjan on the left side, and then Christian Jones, who is like the number 2 guy at left tackle, he was actually at left guard. And they had their starting center, Braden Bryant, on that play, and I was trying to pick out the other players on the other side of the line, and they were sort of blocking more or less, but by that time, apparently the left side of the offensive line had just collapsed the defense, and the play was all the way downfield. So those two guys seem to be two that you can rely on, I think, to see a lot of play in the lineup. And Coach Lou was asked about how he thought the offensive line was developing, and here's what he had to say.
Yeah, they're all doing a really nice job, and again, we're some of the older guys with Ross and Miles coming off the injury, right? We're being smart with kind of their workload, and so to speak, we kind of got them on a pitch count a little bit with things, to make sure that they can get to the season and do the things that we know that they're capable of doing with it all. But Coach Schmidt does an unbelievable job, right, developing those guys up front. Christian Jones is coming along, and we're working him both inside and outside to give us some position versatility as we go along with it. So again, we're mixing and matching. We used a lot of different combinations of young guys, old guys, new guys, guys who are here, right, and looking to find that best 5 that work cohesively together, so that we can go forward and those guys see it all through the same set of eyes up front. Well, this is our second full day in pads, second live work, right, and without seeing that tape, I'm a pretty paranoid head coach, right? So I don't feel very comfortable about anything, and we'll continue to develop the depth and continue to find, the right combination of guys up front there.
Coach Lou said basically that you want to have 9 to 10 guys up front that you feel good about rotating and helping push the ball down the field as you move forward, and that also the Aztecs have had some issues retaining some of their top guys on offense to bigger programs. So the other hope is once you develop a guy like that, you can retain him to help the program move forward.
Absolutely. As far as the defense now, Steve, we haven't talked much about the defense. Chris Johnson had a very good game. He had an interception, and then toward the end, though, he had a pass interference penalty late that I don't think Coach Lewis is going to be too happy with. But he flew around today. He was all over the field.
Yeah, Chris Johnson had a nice game, and he was in the interview room, and Here's what he had to say overall about the defense.
As a whole, I feel like our defense is really coming together these last few weeks, especially like with the final transfers coming in throughout fall camp. I feel like we just all putting everything together. Everybody's learning the plays. Obviously, we have the whole menu right now. Once we start week to week, we'll have more of a game plan with a lot less calls than we ran, or that we usually run, excuse me. But yeah, so I feel like we're really comfortable. All that subbing is pretty realistic because obviously everybody on defense isn't built the same and they don't have the same amount of stamina. You know, the guys on the D-line are 300 pounds, 6'5", so they can't stay out there and play a whole long 12-play drive themselves. So all the rotating, obviously, it was a little more exaggerated today, trying to get everybody a good amount of reps, but it's very similar to in a game sense, especially like if the offense changes personnel, the defense is going to change personnel as well, trying to keep the freshest bodies out there. I say we're not too far from where we need to be, but we're definitely not satisfied with where we are now. We still have I say a long way to go. Just as far as like developing relationships with the team, kind of coming together as a brotherhood instead of just everyone doing their job, being able to help your brother out if he doesn't know what he's doing. Same thing with the offense. You know, defense and offense kind of battle every day, and it kind of has a negative connotation. You know, like it's hard to be really friendly when you're going at it every day. So we just have to, you know, at the end of the day, we're all brothers and we're all trying to get each other better. So by the time the game comes, we should all have developed a great relationship by then.
Other players who performed well, according to Coach Lou. He said he saw Tana Tui flying around. The edges were doing a job on defense, and guys like Trey White and Dominic Oliver and Ryan Henderson, he said, sort of stood out in first blush. Of course, they're going to break down all this film, and everybody's going to be schooled on basically what the coaches saw. But at this point, he says it's also about consistency. Typically, at this point in a camp, the defense ends up being ahead of the offense for whatever reason, especially a complex offense like this one. And I asked at this point who's ahead, and Coach Lou said, based on the game-changing plays, you got to say the defense, but we're still somewhat early in a process. It's kind of the second full day of pads, and at that point, too, as far as the defense overall, he says he's looking for some more consistency. Yeah, it was great to have them generate their turnovers, but he said toward the end of the scrimmage, they also have to dig in and stop the run. According to Coach Lewis, they appeared to fade just a little bit. It's an opportunity to learn from that. And on the flip side, for the offense, he said that's a good thing because it showed that we can move the football on the ground when we need to. And as you've noted earlier, the Aztecs, or have we discussed a whole lot about the Aztecs' wealth of riches at the running back slot?
They have a lot of them, and a lot of them are returning. Jalen Armstead, Lucky Sutton's back, Cam Davis is back. We did not see a lot of Marquez Cooper, who is the transfer from Kent State, and he's the leading FBS rusher, and he has 33 career touchdowns, which leads the FBS, and he played with Coach Lewis at Kent State. So he only played in the very first series, and I think that's because he knows this offense better than anybody else, and I just don't think he needs the reps. And he talked a little bit about that earlier in the week, that he's really familiar with this offense, so I don't think they really needed to play him very much.
Yeah, he looked very good in his appearances, moved the football well, was strong, elusive, had the ability to make guys miss. So I think one of the reasons why is he's played 5 full seasons at the college level, so they don't need to pile on a lot of work on him or extra mileage. So that's great to have a guy, a solid potential, and then a lot of different varieties. They've been kind of calling it the spice rack in some of the news conference gaggles. So that's kind of the long and short of the FanFest part of it. At the end of the scrimmage, after the field goal that was successful, Coach Lou gathered the entire team at that point in the field, and I kind of was curious what he was telling them. And Johnson said, hey, it's something that it was very encouraging. Good job. Still more work to do. Here's what he had to say.
The message I got from it is basically just, the job's not finished. Like, we had a great day, great competition, but like we've all been talking about, we're still a good amount of ways from week 1, and we're nowhere near we need to be prepared for that, and so on weeks coming. So, yeah, he basically just said, today was a great competition day, just another day of practice. And you just keep continuing that fire throughout camp.
Steve, we haven't had a chance to talk about what we saw from the tight ends today, but we do have information about the tight ends, huh?
Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of offense that was generated by them as near as I can recall.
Yeah, I don't think we saw a lot of the tight ends today, especially the guys who are going to see a lot of action this year.
Lewis had a chance to visit Friday with tight end Mikey Harrison, 6'3", 220, a San Francisco native. It's a pretty safe bet he will see considerable playing time this season. Mikey's a senior transfer from Coach Lou's prior stop in Colorado. He got in over the summer. His fall camp is his first with the Aztecs. Originally a walk-on for the Buffs, Harrison had a solid season last year, and his best game came against Colorado State of the Mountain West, 7 catches, 76 yards, 2 TDs. Listen up while Mikey drops a familiar name on us from the Aztecs coaching staff. Last time we checked in, he had survived the wholesale staff turnover and was named senior offensive analyst for Coach Lou. That name would be former offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach, Aztecs all-time leading passer as well, Ryan Lindley.
I mean, obviously, coming off of spending a year with Coach Lou last year at Colorado, I was pretty familiar off the jump with just how the offense ran. And obviously, there was a period, and I wasn't here in the spring, so I had to kind of get back settled in when I got here in the summer. But I feel like we picked up where I led off last December. So. And obviously, Coach Lindley's asked me for my opinion on certain things, just when we're going over install, what I think or what we did last year. So I definitely have some experience from last year, but at the same time, nothing's going to be exactly what it was the year before. So at the same time, we're doing a lot of good things to implement new parts to detail up the offense in certain ways. So I think from that perspective, I'm contributing to the learning curve, and I'm also part of it at the same time. Definitely has a good perspective. Obviously, played quarterback in the NFL for some time, so from that perspective, he knows the offense like the back of his hand. He knows what parts of the offensive line scheme that we need to know that's important, and what the quarterback's thinking when we do certain things in the pass game. So he for that, I mean, he just adds a lot of high football IQ knowledge that the 6 of us are definitely soaking up every single day. So. Just high football IQ coach, and he's doing a really good job of developing all of us right now.
Lindley says the assignment materialized as the new staff started taking stock. He told Coach Lou he was willing to help in any way. Coach Zach Barton's original assignment was special teams and tight ends. He handled special teams under Coach Lou at Kent State. Lindley's help with the tight end room works out for all concerned. Harrison, joined by Jude Wolf, who we met at Media Day in Vegas, seasoned after 5 years at SC, hampered last season by a foot injury that required procedural work. So Lewis at tight end, the Aztecs have 2 senior transfers to complement others, including sophomore Logan Tanner. He got into 8 games last season as a redshirt freshman, including a start against Boise State. Another name tossed out is Gabe Garrettson out of Butte College, who has the prototypical size, 6'4", 240. Harrison is familiar with Coach Lou's no huddle, but prior to that had been through a different offense each season at Colorado. Tanner's situation, similar. Despite the changes in the new offense, there are some constants in the college game at the position. The more he can do of both blocking and route running, the better.
I look and talking with Coach, I think, he's been around, varying levels of personnel, efficiencies or surpluses in certain areas. So, talking to him, I think it all works out of by the end of camp, I've told those guys in the tight end room, hey, each one of you you're competing for every touch you can get or every opportunity you get, even if it's holding down a C-gap and blocking in the run game, doing what we can do. So I think, talking to Coach, the multiplicity of what, he's looking forward and he would love to do. Obviously, you want to keep the defenses on their toes, but I tell our guys we got to earn that each and every day. So, not only are they competing against each other in the room, but I kind of tell them, hey, you're competing against the other 10 guys on the field and the other skill players on the field. You got to show that obviously you're worth getting the ball put in your hands. And I think, we're real fortunate in there to have a couple of guys that are pretty dynamic and pretty athletic. I think we're going to go fast, and I think, with the tempo is putting pressure on the defense. That's where that all comes from. But I think we're going to be fast. We're going to use every blade of grass. The possibilities are kind of wide open for us, But I think at the end of the day, the fun part to listen, and really even for me, just as an offensive mind, listen and learn from Coach Lewis is that, he's also got a wide background, So as much as some of the Kent State stuff you see in 10 personnel and spreading it all out. Well, he also played tight end at Wisconsin, and as he'll say, mama is power, so we're still gonna lean on people. And Mike Schmidt's here from the 22 personnel days with the all-time leading rusher not too long ago. So I think the beauty of that is, I'm gonna keep the poker face on like everybody else, and we could see it all by the end of the season. So I think we're locked in, and we're here, and our kids also are here. They're here to win games. Nobody's here just to catch 100 balls or do this or that. Like, we're here to put points on the board and win games on offense, and that's what I hope you guys will see. I think the great thing, specifically talking about Mikey and Jude, the older guys, is I think anytime you can have a guy with so much the multiple dimensions to him, to have a guy that on any given play call, you put Jude out there, you put Mikey out there, the book's open for coach. I think if there's only one guy out there, sometimes if you're in a 12 personnel outfit or a 13 personnel outfit, there's one guy that kind of has one superpower or one trick in his bag. So if he's out there as the only tight end, you're a little bit limited in what you want to call. So I think any time when we're on the recruiting trail, and Coach Barton's been like, you want to get a guy that can do everything. You don't want to kind of hamstring or handcuff your coach when he's calling plays. So that's the fun thing I think about those first two guys. And then even I mentioned Logan Tanner. Gabe Garrettson's a guy that's had a phenomenal camp. He had a great spring coming in here from Butte. It's each one of our guys kind of brings something to the table that allows coach to kind of dig into that bag and pull out a trick or two.
When you have a guy like Ryan Lindley running the tight ends room, there's a little extra street cred involved. Though he never played the position, he did work with a number of pros as a starting QB for a time in Arizona.
I've had a couple tight end coaches when I was in the league that were former quarterbacks, and I reached out to them too. And the biggest thing I think is anytime as a tight end, and especially in what we're trying to do, where the guys are going to be hooked up in the box, they're going to be hipped up on a tackle, they're going to be on the line of scrimmage, and can be in as far as being all the way outside the numbers. So I think finding a way to teach everything we do conceptually, so that if things change, like hey, on a dime, and Mikey Harrison needs to go from playing inline tight end to being out split out at wide receiver, hey, we can teach those guys to think conceptually, allow them to learn. And hey, it's not just I'm robotic, I'm in my job right here. Know where our piece fits into the entire puzzle. And then the biggest thing too, especially probably in the pass game for the most part, is letting them know hey, yeah, that may have felt good to us in our position at tight end of how we ran that route, but understand what this guy's feeling who's holding the football in the backfield, right? And the ultimate goal is to make him feel confident about delivering it on time. So try to give them that perspective in everything I do. And I got to coach wide receivers when I was at the University of Utah, so kind of taking those parts of the pass game, and having Mike Schmidt here has been huge for me of some of the stuff in the run game that honestly at the beginning maybe I lacked in some ways. Leaning on him and leaning on Coach Lewis to kind of clean those things up for me has been really good.
And finally, when you have a former Aztec player like Lindley coaching in the program, they know there's a tradition in that tight end room born of players who've been where they are, who've made the grade, they've made the plays, and the exceptional ones have made it a living.
Physicality and toughness, that's effort, that's going to be a non-negotiable for us. So I think those are things we can control, right? Like attitude, we have to have a baseline, and that's where I hit on kind of David Wells is a guy, for an example. We talked about him the other day. If you look at David Wells' stat line, okay, I think he caught 46 balls while he was here in 52 games and 6 touchdowns. Well, hey, he also won 40 out of the 50 games that he played in. He's got 2 conference championships, 3 10-plus win seasons, and that's the stuff that made David Wells a pro. That's why David Wells is going into his 8th year in the NFL, okay, making close to $1 million this year. That's what I told those guys. I'm not sure what his NFL stat line is, but I'm sure it's not too great either, but he's still out there doing it. And I've told those guys, you find your niche, hence why I said, hey, you work for every opportunity we get. Whatever coach wants us to do, we're going to go out there, be unselfless, and just work our butts off to get that done. The sexy stuff is running around, catching the football, being out in space. So the guys that can do that, that's a plus. But I'm always going to tell them the foundation is having grit, playing with low pads, and fitting your hands up on people for sure.
So at tight end, the Aztecs have potential at that position. How they develop game to game still going to come down to individual calls designed to go against opportunities presented by opposing defenses, and how they make the plays when they're called for them. Also, of course, how well the rest of the parts of the offense work together. Lewis?
Thanks, Steve, for the info on the tight ends, and that will wrap up this special FanFest edition of Aztecs All In.
Hey, you Bogart, that's my line.
Sorry, you do it.
Oh, well, I was going to say, let's wrap up these festivities on the FanFest edition of Aztecs All In. You can Follow us on the X, Aztecs_all_in. And you know what else, Lewis? It's embarrassing the amount of fan mail we get. It's so embarrassing we don't share it because there's just so much praise there, but you can keep it coming. AztecsAllIn@gmail.com. So for Lewis Weiner, Steve Perez saying so long from Snapdragon and FanFest.